ways that we measure two ways that we measure angles in math. So hit mode on your calculator and take a look. This third line down. One is called radians. You'll deal with that when you get into upper level maths like pre-calc, calculus. Most mathematicians are going to measure it this way. That's why it's the default on your calculator. Students, on the other hand, particularly say in the elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, we tend to use degrees. So go down, go over, hit enter. Every time we do trig work, you want to make sure that you are measuring in degrees, not radians. Okay, notice I was in radians, so I got a different answer. So let's do it in degrees. Hit enter. Go back, and let's try it again. Sine of 60, close parentheses, hit enter. Now, here is the work we had in its answer. Here's the work that we tried in radians, very different answer. Here's the work now that we're measuring in degrees, and notice our first and third answers now match up. You've got to make sure your calculator is measuring in degrees, not radians. So this is a good example to show you that, hey, there is a difference. All right? So let's look at another way besides the calculator that we could approximate these values. All right? Take a look. One way to do it is to set up a grid, okay, in an arc, a circular arc. And notice all of our angles here, we've got 10 degrees and 20 degrees and 30 degrees and 40 degrees and so on. What we can do is use this gradations to help us figure out our sines and cosines. So for example, I know this is kind of hard to read, but what if we wanted to know the sine of 40 degrees? All right. Then what we could do is follow our arc all the way up here to 40. And I'll write it so that it's a little bit larger so that you can see it. So there it is, 40 degrees. All right. If I want to know the sine of 40 degrees, then what I do is I go to 40 on the arc and I go down. Okay, just straight down and straight over. Okay, because that'll help me with sine and with cosine. Okay, so if I want to know sine, I'm going to draw these lines straight down and straight over. For sine of 40, in this case, we're going to go over and see where we are on the y axis. So 40 degrees, I'm going to go straight over, and I end up about here. Notice they approximate it as 0.64. Okay, because remember, it's opposite over hypotenuse. So there it is, sine. And in this case, this is what it's going to end up being. Okay, so we end up at 0.64. And notice that it's about 0.64. I'll call it that. If you wanted to find cosine, you do just the opposite. So again, we said we would go 40 and go over. We'd also go down. Well, if we go from 40 and go down, we end up about here. They call it 0.77. So this is another way for us to approximate values. Now, the nice thing about this is it's relatively fast. There's not a lot of computation. You just go over or go down, depending on whether you're wanting to find sine or cosine. There is one problem, though. Just one little bitty problem. It's not very accurate. All right. So if you're wanting to try that, you've got your notes. I've given you kind of a blank one here, in that you can look at all of the different angle measures. So for example, if I wanted to find the sine of, say, 0 degrees, okay, well, if I go over here to 0, remember for sine we'll go left and see where it crosses. Well, it's at 0. And if we want to find the cosine of 0, well, we would go down, and there it is at 1. And then we can keep doing this, and we can see all these different values. So notice 40 was done for you. So let's try 10, for example. So if I'm at 10 degrees and I slide over, I might call that at maybe, what do you think, 0.18? I don't know. So hard to read there, it's kind of small. Let's try cosine. So let's say 10 degrees. If we slide down, I don't know, what would you call that? Maybe 0.9. I don't know. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that would be what? 0.8 maybe, something like that. I'm not sure. Yeah, about like that. Somewhere in that neck of the woods. And then so on and so forth. And notice it's very hard to read and not a great way of doing it, but it will work. So again, try it, see what you get, and we'll see what you find. All right? So there's your video on just basic trig. The next video we're going to look about using trig in a little bit more advanced way, as well as some of the inverses of trig. So best of luck to you.